And here we go, close up to a pile of knitting. Here we go. This is the Tarmac Tank close up. These are those are the subtle stripes I was talking about. So they're the 1 round by 1 round or 1 row by 1 row. And here, this is the larger stripes. So that's the striped I-cord bind off, and those are 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a 4, 4, 4, 4 round stripes each time, and this was 1 row, 1 row, 1 row, 1 row, all round. So this section was knitted flat, so it's knitted flat till you cast on a whole lot more for the underarms. So this is the underarm section. There's the beginning of the row. We can see on the inside where the round starts each time. Row and then round, you can see slightly different techniques of switching from one to the next. This garment, this vest, this tank, my mum and I knitted. So I knitted the top down to, actually we can probably use that as the marker. I guess I knitted it down to around here, and then my mum took over and knitted the bottom half. I did the increases and decreases at the top and put in the eyelets into place, and that's the kind of bit that I needed to know exact numbers and things for the pattern, and writing the pattern, and that's the bit where you count. And then we've worked out that between us, my mum has a lot of people over and likes knitting socially, and knitting round and round and round suits that sort of people dropping round and things like that knitting, whereas these bits, it's a little bit more counting, and especially when I'm writing a pattern, I'm doing a lot of keeping track of what I'm doing. But let me not get too carried away with those sorts of stories. Let's get to the left underarm. I am going to start by picking up and knitting. I am going to do that in this colour. It was a choice of the lighter or the darker one. Had a little bit more of the darker left. It also seems to blend in well. I'm going to pick it up onto a circular needle. So the whole vest, I am a loose knitter, so I did that on a 3mm, and my mum did it on a 3.5, and because it's close enough, you can't really see where one of us goes over to the other one. But I did it on a 3mm, but the one I'm going to pick it up onto is actually smaller. So this is, I had a 2.25mm needle around, and 2.25mm. As I said, I am a loose knitter, so I tend to have quite a few little ones around. But the reason why I want to do it onto a smaller needle is because, so the bottom edge I-cord is, you just finish, and then every stitch as you cast it off, you're making the I-cord at the same time. But for the other bits around here, where you're not working from live stitches, where you're picking up and knitting, in a sense you could also choose to, you could knit a separate I-cord, just knit I-cord and then sew it on. But instead of sewing it on, it's like you pre-sew it on by picking up and knitting. So that pre-sewing on, I wanted it to be a little bit tighter, so putting it onto a smaller needle was the way that what I've done to achieve that. A little bit of knot from the inside of the spilling the guts out. Here we go. So it's gonna have a little tricky time focusing each time. I'm using my telephone to record this. Get things done, not wait for fancy gadgets. So I am going to look here. I'm going to go in, and I think I am going to, as I go around, I am going to look for here, there. I think that's the distance at which I can focus. So the cast on for this underarm happened in the paler one. This is the darker one I'm using. So I think just for ease, rather than poking around in that bit, I'm going to poke into, try and consistently pick up and knit into this darker one, which also is the one I'm doing. So I've got the tail at the back, I've got the needle at the front. I'm going to poke into that stitch, wrap it round as if I was knitting. Whoop, slides off already, so wrap it around as if I'm knitting. See? Okay, fiddly demonstration because I've got the video between the camera between me and that. There we go. I've got one. Go in here. Get another one. Go in there. Get another one. And then here's the next one I want. So I'm just going to work my way around here, picking up all the stitches that I need. This is when you read instructions for pick up and knit, this is what it means. Usually you go in from the right side, so this is the right side, that's the purl side, so think of that as the knit side of stocking stitch and that as the purl side. I'm going in on the right side here, so the right side is facing me and I'm picking up, so sticking in and then picking up, and that's the knit there. So they come, those stitches are coming onto the needle as if ready to knit, even heading the right way. So the little legs, the front leg is forward and the back leg of the stitch is back, so they'll be ready to go. I used to, long time ago, pick up and knit and just thought that you kind of picked up a leg there. There are times in which you might be asked to do that in a knitting pattern, not this one, and it can be hard to keep track and like what the neatness is if you're poking in randomly, but pick up and knit, generally you are, that's what this means. So I'm picking up and knitting, and if you can see what I'm doing is, if you can see the little row of V's here going in, so there's all of those V's, so that's each stitch. So I'm going into a stitch and then pulling the next stitch through, so it looks really seamless when you're on there if you actually find. So these stitches heading this way to make it go seamlessly, these V's are that way, so this way, and that's one that I want to go into there. In between, so if you were picking up along here and wanting to grow it down that way, you would pick these V's, so there's a V going that way, and then you would pick up in this spot, in that spot there. So there is a difference, and you want to, it's that reading your knitting thing and getting a handle of what you're doing. But think about the V's in this way, because we're knitting upwards that way, we want to go into V's that are pointing downwards. So because so to go up, you got to go down. So if you were going into a V going that way, then you would be growing downwards. So V pointing up, you would be picking up and knitting to go downwards, and that one up, down, yeah. So I'm going to keep going along, and these ones I am picking up one stitch for every stitch that there was in the, around the edge. So these were the stitches that I added, and they were added with cable cast on, because that also keeps things nice and stable. There's my next one here. So, and there's the next one. So it's a, right now I'm picking up a stitch for every stitch that was knitted in the vest. I am picking up and putting a new one on the needle. Keep going. round and around. Realise there's a funny little sweet spot in distance from, if I'm here it starts getting blurry, but about there. So here you can start seeing, that was where I was talking. So this is where, coming down from the top, this is the armpit. So this is the bit that's under the arm, and this is like the side boob side. So this part of the strap comes straight down, and then if you want, that's like the modesty bit, like it's the decorative bit. It's the shaping bit that makes it a nice round armhole, but you could also think otherwise it would go straight down and then across there, which is totally easy and simple, but here there's a little bit of rounding there. So now I'm picking up around that round bit. I started at the beginning of the round, started at the edge there, and that would be a nice place to start anyway. So if you're picking up the right armhole, that one won't have a beginning of a round on it because you've only got one beginning of a round. I would still pick that up somewhere around the back of the garment, sort of under the arm, because if you have any issues trying to hide where your joins are, then if you hide it at the back, and under the arm, that's somewhere where you're less likely to be reminded of it. I think generally other people won't see that at all, but you will. So it's more about hiding it for yourself than hiding it from other people. Won't get distracted. We'll talk about that afterwards. So yeah, so going around the round, I'm now going to start going into every stitch for the rows. So basically what I tend to do when I'm picking up a knitting is I pick up a row for every row, and so I pick up when I'm picking up a knitting, I pick up a stitch in every row and a stitch in every stitch. That is something that I learnt from my friend Tom van Dynen, who's Tom of Holland. And it's a nice way of keeping things neat. So that's the last stitch. So I want to make sure that I'm picking up one stitch in. So there's the final, so the stitches are going this way. So there's first stitch, second stitch, third stitch, and I want to have, so I'm picking up like one stitch in from the edge, and if I think about continuously picking up one stitch in from the edge, then hopefully that helps make a neater edge too. But I was saying that the trick that I learned from Tom is to keep going with, to pick up, when you're picking up a knitting, is to pick up a stitch for every stitch and for every row, and then later on reduce down to what your, or increase up to what your pattern calls for. I think that there's, you know, often it says pick up, you know, 3 stitches, pick up 2 stitches for every 3 rows, or pick up 150, and you're kind of left scrambling around at the end how many stitches you'd like to, you know, you need. So you always, I don't know, I found that doing that, I'd usually end up then at the end of it, you're trying to pick, like find some extra stitches to create from somewhere, or suddenly trying to not increase or decrease. So it's really easy to get gathers. So instead what I do is pick up from every stitch and every row, and then do my calculations afterwards. I can talk you through that as well. So picking up a knitting here along, so that's the slight curved, that is a slight curve edge, or rather that one is still straight, the real curve was in the neckline. So that curve is where you sort of have to be a little bit more careful about how you're finessing where you're picking up. This is more of a straight diagonal. Well, this is actually the edge of the row, and all of the extra stitches are coming in here between the eyelets and the edge. So you're not, that really is the straight edge of a knit. So there is the top eyelet. I think I will go in there. And then here again, the next, so that's the straight bit of the arm. So I'm going to look, and I want to go, this is the one stitch in. So I'm going to repeatedly try and find that same spot to go into each time. And this is the bit that we can totally fast forward. But yeah, holding it closer to me or that sort of thing, this, you can get into quite a rhythm similar to when you're knitting. You can go faster and faster, but for demonstrating high speed isn't necessarily beneficial. Unless I want you to know that I can do it quickly. So yeah, so here we go. Along here, I'm poking in, I'm looping it round, and I'm scooping it through as a stitch. So you could just imagine that was the stitch you had on your needle, and I'm kind of tensioning it with my hands there. So if that was a stitch on the needle, so I'm sticking it into the stitch, and then forming the stitch regularly, but relying on a bit of the tension between here and holding it there. Right, now I'm back to the beginning again. So I'm just going to, so now I've joined the whole round. I will just let that one slip off, because as I was going around, I thought about the fact. So I'm going in, throwing it round and pulling it. And sometimes you actually do need to, like, I'm tensioning this a lot harder than I would when I was making a normal stitch. So I'm gonna go in, and then as I'm throwing that, this bit I'm actually holding a lot harder as I'm trying to get it through somewhere that's not totally like an absolutely regular stitch. So now the next thing that I'm going to do, now I've got all of those on the needle, I am going to count how many I have. And I tended to, always used to count 2 by, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And now I tend to count in 5. So we're at 10, so then I'd go 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. And usually when I'm counting, I also stick in a marker every time I get to 50, because invariably something comes in that distracts me. So I didn't put my markers close by. So can I squish a little bit of yarn through? Nah, not really going to mush through, but usually I have my little clip markers or safety pins or sandwich ties or something. but there, and pull that through and mark that as my 50, and then keep counting 5s. I think 5 works maybe because we have 5 fingers and 5 toes. Like our brain can look at 5 and see it as 5, whereas if you're like trying to see 10 instantly, you're counting, but I think your brain can still sort of look and see, okay, there are 5 there. I also think we're all pretty decent at our 5 times tables as well. So whereas if you could see 7, we might get a bit stuck on that, or 3s as well. So 5 is easy. You're going 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and then there's another gap. I'm gonna put that in again, another inelegant, ramming it through. Let's see, do have the knitting needles I'm going to use handy, so poke that through with that help, getting into a right little twist here, loop it round, and this is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So another ram it through. Little mark there. And 5. Get 5 there, yep, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 46, 47, 48, and then I missed some. I think I dropped one off, did I? Yeah, I think I want one extra here. So what was that? 849. How about I just make that going back into the same row? How about I just make that 50? So even though I've got the markers in 50, that's an easy one. So that's 50, 50, 50, 50. So 50, 100, 150, 200, and take those out. So now I know, get out the trusty notebook. My friend Judith gave this one to me, penguin on it. So here, written things down. So here we go, written down, armholes, 136, so I want 136 stitches. I've been making the size medium, that's what my size calls for. I have 200, so I want to know how many extra stitches here. So 200, I'm going to take 200, 136 away from 200. You can do this in your head, you can do it on your phone calculator. I got a trusty old implement from secondary school, so not a hard one, but we'll use it anyway. 200 minus 136 gives us 64 stitches. So we've got 64 stitches too many. So we want to disappear 64. We want to decrease 64 stitches as we're knitting our I-cord edging there. Of course, you could have just picked up exactly 136 stitches as you were going round. You could drop them as you go too. So if I go 200, no, where 7 got in there. So then if we go 200 divided by 64. Turn the damn thing off. If I go 200 divided by 64, is that? It's about every 3. So every 3 stitches I'd need to get rid of 1 if I want to get rid of 64. So that would mean I'm knitting 1 stitch and knitting 2 together. So knit 1, knit 2 together as I go around with a little bit of the 1.25, well, 0.125, that little extra bit. I'm not really going to think about that because as I go around, I'm not going to remember to do knit 1, knit 2 together each time. So I'm sure it'll end up being vaguely equal. So here, there, now we are going to go to the I-cord edging. Finally, here we go, ready for I-cord. So the I-cord, putting the I-cord on, we've got all the picked up and knitted stitches. These needles I said were the 2.25. These ones I've got here, I'm going to make the I-cord edging with 2 double pointed needles. Now I've got the short ones that are really useful for doing mittens, doing fingers on gloves really, and so they're the shorter length, and I love having these ones around. I've got a 3 1/4. I'm going to do the I-cord on a 3 1/4. I did the knitting on a 3. I could do it on a 3, but I had a 3 1/4 handier, and what's a quarter between friends when it's a garment I am going to get to wear myself. So don't need that end, but I'm going to go in. So for starting the I-cord, I'm going to start it with the grey one. And for I-cord edging, you need 3 extra stitches. So I'm putting on 3, so I kind of loop that round. So rather than putting on a slip knot, which I find gives things a bit of bulk, I'm just laying it over and then putting that one back there and then putting another. So this is the backward loop cast on. So there I've got my 3 on without a slip knot. Here I'm ready to go. You can start this however you want, but I'm going to knit into that one there, and then this I'm going to get ready. So this I am actually going to slide it off that way. So rather than sliding it off knitwise, I'm going to slide it in as if I was actually knitting the stitch there. So it means that the front leg is, I'm putting it on backwards onto the needle. So I've got my 4 charcoal stitches and my 1 green that was the next one along here. And now I'm giving that a little tug, taking the next double pointed needle, sliding those down, and with the tail I am going to knit those 3 new stitches I made. 1, 2, 3. Backwards loop cast on, also known as E-wrap cast on, is always a little bit tight when you knit in, but there I've got the 3. And these ones I'm going to go in through the back loop and knit those 2 together. So the charcoal one, the grey one and the green one, I'm knitting together through the back loop. And then to get ready for the next one, because I said I was going to knit 2 together, I'm going to slide 2 off there. And then give it a little tug. I tend not to give it too much of a tug for an I-cord for when I've picked up and knitted. I don't need it to be super duper tight. So now I'm going So I've pulled it. So this is like forming a strand across the back. And now I'm going to knit into that one. One, ooh, did I just lose one? No, phew, I didn't. 2, 3. And these ones I'm doing through the back loop again. And now I'm knitting those 3 together there. I'm making this a bit confusing, aren't I? It's not the most straightforward way because I'm combining a lot of things, but I don't know, also think it's nice to show that you can, knowing that there are a lot of really amazing, straightforward, clear tutorials you can find online for any small specific technique, but this is what I'm doing to both decrease to the number that I want along there, and do a stripe I-cord bind off. So now that was the 3rd row, and I want 4. Oh, I didn't. So putting that one on, move that so that goes in. I slide this down so that I can work from this tip of the needle, and then I start knitting again. 1, 2, 3, and then through the back loop and in and into the green one as well. So what you're doing here is each time you're coming up with, so by knitting a green one, that's what's attaching it. So that's the attached I-cord. So because you're taking one from the garment each time and decreasing it with the last one of this, that's what's attaching it. So I want to get that ready for next time again. So knit it in. And so this way, by knitting it on that direction, that way when this one goes in through the back loop, this bit's actually going in there straight. So it's not coming in with a stitch or through the back leg of that one, which would give that a twist. So that's helping that stay straight. And now I'm going to do, so it's a 4-row one. So I've got my 4 there now. Take that out of my hand for ease, put it in the other one, sliding those down. Here we go. There, introducing the white. I'm going to start on that edge now. I'm going to knit 3 white. 1, 2, 3, and now knit those 2 together through the back loop, and then slide that on there to get that ready for next time. You can see that that grey one is big, but if I tug that there, that brings it down to size, and I'll give that a tug later when I attach it in. So now I'm on to 4 whites, and now slide those down to the other end to start and use that needle. There we go. 1, 2, 3 regular, and then 2 together. Get that ready for the next row. So there, 5 on the needle. And this next bit is what I have worked out. Totally forgotten to knit 2 together occasionally, as I said I might. So this one on the 3rd row of the 3rd row or round, it's hard to know when you're making I-cord. So on this 3rd one, what I'm going to do is I'm sticking in through both of those, and then that one where I was saying you could tug to adjust the tightness, I'm lying that over the top and knitting it together with the others, and that is what I've found helps just make the I-cord a little bit neater. So this time I'm going to remember to do 2 together. So there they are for the next one here. So yeah, so that makes it a bit neater what I was doing, and I worked that out when I was starting this. Can I see where it was? Okay, so here, if we look at that, that was the beginning. So that was with the striping where I was doing it, and you know, that's the outside of it. That looks totally neat and tidy. So it's not an issue. You can just pick up and you don't need to think about like catching the floats of the I-cord. But you could. It's a question of finessing it and whether that makes you feel happier about what you're knitting, or just an extra little satisfying thing. So that was where it gets caught, where it's not being caught. And then here by the end, which is the end of it, that's where I'd worked out how to hide it. So you can see there and there looks a lot more similar than this one, then there and there, which much more clearly feels like it has a front and a back. Obviously it does, because you've got the purl side and the knit side, but here the color changes are being hidden inside the I-cord edging more. And to do that, that's what I was saying, I caught on the third row, I'm tucking it in, and also doing something when I change color. So this is the last, this one here is the fourth row of the white stripe. So yeah, when I'm explaining this, I'm sort of assuming that you've done I-cord before and that this isn't your very first introduction to I-cord, this video, because it would be really confusing if it was, because I'm throwing in a few other things into the mix as well. So it's kind of aimed at those who've done it a bit more often before, and this is like, oh, that's another way to do it. Okay, so here, this is further helping tuck the colour in. So I'm keeping the white at the top and then picking the charcoal up over the top of it. So that's helping embed it in a little bit. So this one is here, and the other thing would be, that would be the charcoal and the white is loose. So then the charcoal is first and the white is free, but I'm trapping the white behind the charcoal, using it next. So that's trapped behind. You know what? I was finding that at first I was giving this a real tug. I find I tug it just so that that first stitch is neat enough, but not totally disappeared. And as you start here, don't tug too hard, because otherwise you really remove any stretch that your I-cord might have. And it's nice to have a bit of stretch in your knitting. So here we go, there, knit those two together through the back loop, slide that one on already, ready for your next round, transfer needles, so slide that down to the other tip. I'm not really giving a super hard, like when I knit I-cord, unattached I-cord, I'm really giving it a really hard pull across the back to try to make it really tube-like. This kind of makes enough of a tube already, I feel like, so let's try and stick with my ratio. I'll put 2 on there. Here we go, this is the third line. So I'm knitting 1, 2, 3, and in where I'm doing those lot together, I'm gonna put the white over with, so that I'm knitting it in the together bit, but just taking that one through, so the white gets caught behind there, gets caught behind at the back. But then I'm not letting it, like I'm not adding it on again, because if you did that, if you did it twice in a row like that, this would suddenly, here you can see it starting to show there on the front. If you were doing 2 rows, you would basically be making that float show up on the front of your knit. So I do it once and then make sure it's hanging back down the back again. Oh, let me get that one ready for next time. Ready for next time. Here we go. And then I am knitting the fourth row of, I almost forgot, going through both together again, but through the back loop. So here we go. Get those 2, so going in as if for knitting. You've got to slide these along as you go along. Shove them a little bit there. So there, those are ready. What I was saying was make sure that's coming across here and picking up the new colour, the next colour over the top of it. Giving that a little bit more of a tug. You can see it tightening here, but no more than that, and then making sure I'm not pulling super tight. And here I go, 1, 2, 3, and then through the back loop together with the there, and getting that ready for next time. So sliding that on knitwise, and then slide those down to the other end. There, I'm on the 3rd row, so that was knit 3 of the I-cord, and then through the back loop, and then to help hide that, I'm lying that one over the top and knitting with it there, making sure the grey is leaning down, getting those ready for next time. And then working those in one piece again through the back loop. There we go. I do find that like little bits of the other colours show through, particularly if there's ones with contrast, but like once it's on and it's round, like you're not really seeing it. You can see a little bit, but I think once it's washed and blocked, and anyway, that's sort of part of the character of it. And this yarn has a lovely little natural slight slubbiness to it too, so that's got some variety, and it just adds to the overall effect of it. Yeah, so here we go on to the next colour. Oh yeah, let me get that ready there. So I've got 5 on my needles again. I mean, you could do a 5 and, you know, have that as a 6th one. You could do an I-cord edge with 5. I don't know. I've done the rest of them with 4, so I'm doing this one with 4 as well. So yeah, making sure that the white was tucked and that the grey is reaching over it. And as I pull here, if you watch that stitch there, so I'll try and keep my thumb by it. As you pull that up, that's getting a bit smaller. Zip. Don't want it to be tiny. Catching the white behind the grey, not pulling the grey too tight because otherwise you lose the I-cord stretch. And then I keep knitting on in the next colour, and then through the back. So that through the back, I guess in a sense that twists this one, but because it's that last stitch of the I-cord, you're not seeing it, and it just saves time in comparison to you could do a slip. You could slip it and then knit it the right way round, but just doing that one through the back loop, by the fact that you've already gotten that one ready for it in the row before, slipping that one, you're not noticing that twist really, but you would notice it if you were putting it in that one wrong. So that last one going in through the back loop, you're not, yeah, it's unnoticeable, I think. So I will do a couple more, and then I'll put it on time lapse again, because you don't need to see me go all the way round. So this was the 3rd one. So then I am going through, knitting through the back, adding the white to it, and then knitting through both of those, making sure the white is out of the way, sliding those stitches on to knit together next time, and then doing this row as normal. And yeah, again, not giving a super hard tug across the back. So through the back loop there, making sure that white is back down and not coming along. Oh, I need to throw it, don't I? Yeah, there we go. So that is 4, and now putting one on for next time, lying that across the back, picking up the white ready to go. They can all slide down. This comes here. And yeah, so I just feel like you don't need to do it on double pointed needles. I could just show that actually. So there, that's coming, those ones. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to pull that one bigger. So I'm just going to reach in with this one, with that strand, and pull up that slack, so that's smaller now, and that will be hidden inside more. So get that ready for next time. Here we go. We can see that grey is big. If it's bothering you, you can tighten it a bit now, and then you'll tighten it again later. So knit there, knit there, knit there, and then those two together. Oh, taking some extras there. Don't want that. Reinsert. There we go. There. Slide those down, and that's the benefit of using this short length of double pointed needles, because you have less far to slide. You can use longer ones, it's not a problem. Double pointed needles, I love having wooden ones or bamboo ones of those. I prefer metal tips for my circular needles, but wooden ones for, oh, that's the one where I want to not forget to add that one in. Yeah, so wooden double pointed needles I love because they can jump and slip out quite easily. So by having the wood or the bamboo just gives it a little bit of friction, to help it stay in and not slide really fast. Probably also depends on what you are making. I'm not much of a sock knitter, so I know people who really like to pick up speed while they're knitting socks do like to have metal double pointed, because that, you know, that does slip through wool quicker. I'm often using it for I-cord or for arms and legs on little things, like little creatures or stuff. So double pointed, I find I really like the wooden ones or the bamboo ones here. So I'm going to change that color again, making sure that's tucked behind, lifting the grey over the top, giving a little check to see that it's okay there. So now I am going to pretend that I am going to let go of this one. So pop that down there, use this as if I was just only had 2 needles. So then I'd be knitting that through the back loop. And of course I'm using 2 small ones for this, so this doesn't work. But if you were doing this, so then at the point that you got there, you would need to slide all of these ones back onto your needle in order to start at the beginning again. So there you start at the beginning, and then you would need to slip, knit those so that they were the right direction, there, and then slide those on again, start from the beginning. There we go, slip, and then slip, knit, and remember to add that one in. So yeah, so if you don't have double pointed needles, it's totally possible. You're just transferring quite a lot. So I have really enjoyed using double pointed needles to, you're holding more needles in your hand because you've kind of got four tips on the go if you count that one and that one and that one and the other one. But it's basically 3 on the go at the same time. And to me, that just speeds up, because I-cord edging can be a little bit epic, the time it takes. So any little bits. So yeah, now I'm going to change colour again, making sure the grey is tucked behind the white. So yeah, this is my way where I feel like there's so much less transferring using those 2 double pointed needles, that it's worth it for the long I-cord edges. And I suppose you could, if you don't have double pointed needles, you could sacrifice if you've got like a pair of plastic, old-fashioned. Sometimes you still find them in the charity shop if you luck out and find some regular straight needles. You could just abuse them and cut the tips off, since you're only using one end. No, you do need double. Scrap that idea. I was going to suggest that you could chop it off, you could snap it, but you are using both tips. Although if that was a straight edge, that wouldn't matter so much. So yeah, you could abuse some needles, cut them off through the back. Remember to include the grey, tucking it behind. There we go. I do it on the 3rd one each time. You don't necessarily need to do it on the 3rd one each time. I mean, you could do it on the 2nd, but to me, there's the rhythm of, you've caught it behind the 1st one, you're doing the 2nd one normally, and then catching it behind the 3rd one, and then just knitting the 4th one normally, just straight again. So that rhythm of doing things helps being a bit more memorable, and you're doing that for the rhythm of it. There we go. So that is what the back of it looks like. So you do have this. I'm assuming there's some way to tuck that up inside. That would be extra satisfying. But I've not done that for this I-cord edging. There, going around the edge there. So if you do that, it gets holy. Do that hole goes away again a bit, really. So here, and now I'm going to keep going round. But yeah, so that is the start of the striped I-cord edging. I'm striping every 4. You could stripe every 3 as well. I think it adds a really fun detail. I saw it, somebody had done it at the edge of a shawl, it was their version of somebody else's pattern they were knitting, and it had a solid one, and they decided to add a striped I-cord edging. I was like, that's amazing. Let me see how I can work that into something. It's the endless being inspired by other people and being inspired by people who are inspired by other people, and so it goes on. But where polite, it is nice to mention. I don't know, we all learn from somewhere. It's very rarely that something magically comes from nowhere in knitting, if ever. So yeah, that is the striped I-cord edging. I am going to finish it off now, and then I'll show you at the end as well how I join the beginning and the end together. Right, so I've stopped a little shy of the end. So that's where I started the I cord. I've got this much left to do, and then that's where I've gotten to. So I've almost gotten the whole loop, but as I was doing it, I thought of a few other things to mention. So as I am about to start the next colour, I realised that I've laid the grey one, I've laid the grey charcoal one across the back there, I've got the white, and if you are a little bit conscious about which way you wrap when you're tucking the other one in each time, you can avoid getting your strands into a tangle. So if you kind of wrap it and then unwrap it each time, then you don't need to do the whole thing of unwinding your balls together. So that would be when you come to round 3, where you are catching the grey strand behind with the white ones as you do it. So here, this is round 3, so I'm starting this one off there, 1, 2, 3. I usually insert it into both of those first and then check where I am laying the grey one over. And what I've done is, when I'm doing that, I'm making sure that I'm then untangling the white one and the grey one so that it leads straight in, so that it's not making a whole twist each time, an additional twist. So each time I'm doing some lying the two colours on top of each other to catch them, I'm doing something that is like just keeping a little eye that move untwists, rather than letting it go and then finding out I've got a whole twist. I mean, twists in yarn are really easy to undo. You just untwist them. You wrap the balls around each other a few times and then you've got the twist out, or you can let it untangle by putting them in a Ziploc bag, or there's all kinds of ways to untwist. That could be for another chapter, but yeah, but by just having a little think about that you're not twisting from the start, you can avoid needing to untwist. So there, I'm lying it across. I'm going to pick the grey one up, and so you see how each time I've got the 4 and then the one green that I'm picking up, so that it's attaching the I cord. What I was also thought might be worth mentioning is you can also do a little, so knit your 3 there, and that is how I've been suggesting doing it, that you get it ready there. But if you don't get it ready, what you can do is you got the 4 and then you start again on this side. 1, 2, 3, and then this one you can slip. So I've slipped it, then I'm knitting those ones, or knit that one depending if you're decreasing or not. So knit that and then pass the slip stitch over. So then slide those down. So then I've only ever got the 4 on this needle, if that is an easier way for you to keep things straight of what happens when. There, get to the end of the row, slip that one, I'm going to knit that one. This is the 3rd row, so I want to include that white, so I'm catching it behind the back. There we go, I've knitted those, and then I'm passing that slip stitch over. 4 again, starting again from the beginning, sliding them down, knitting 1, 2, 3, slip the 4th, and then knit the green, pass the slip stitch over. So there, that's the other way where it's just a little bit different. Rather than getting it ready beforehand, you're knitting it off when you need it. So wanted to make sure that was over the top. So there, that's the first catch in round 1 of the stripe of the I-cord. Go here. Slip that. Knit the green. Pass the slip stitch over. Slide it down. Knitting all of the whites. There. Slip that last one. I'm done with that needle. And then I knit as many greens together as I need, and then pass that over. Start again. This is the 3rd round, so the I-cord, so 1, 2, 3, slip that last one. There, want to make sure that I've got the grey along, checking that I'm untangling it as I do it. There we go. There, that's together now, and then pass that slip stitch over. Slide them down. 1, 2, 3, slip that one, knit that, and then pass the slip stitch over. There. Slip it, knit the green, there. So yeah, I think it really, and it totally depends on what rhythm you prefer and what sticks in your head better. Just showing that there are a couple of different options. Can even be nice to mix it up so that, you know, these things can get a little monotonous. Either it's good to get into a total rhythm so that you've got your rule that you won't forget, or it can be nice to try out different ways, and either as a way of helping you find your absolute favorite, or as a way to keep you on your toes and keep things interesting. Either way you prefer, there are a couple of options there. So that was the way, getting it ready there again, or doing it before. So I am getting to the end stretch here. This is my last grey. Grey, grey, grey. And those together. There we go. So here, grey there, enough stitches to do this last bit. So last time, making sure that's laying over, that grey's lying over the top. Start off with the white and knit, knit, knit. Since I didn't get it ready for myself, slip that one, knit that one, and pass the slip stitch over. Now get it ready, so don't slip it on, just mix it up each time. There we go. Oh, and this is what I've always found each time with the neck, with the bottom, each time that last few stitches, because that needle, metal needle, is slippery and there's now not much to keep it on. It likes jumping out when there's only a few left to knit off the metal one. 2, 3, and knit 2 together. And there. Oh, see, that one just wants to jump off. It's also loose. So here we go. Knit, 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 and then back loop through the back loop those together, lying the grey over for the last time because I do need the grey again. There, slide it down onto the last stitch of green, put that on there so it stops trying to escape. Here we go. So done with these ones, I'm done, so I'm laying those aside, and here I'm going to knit those last ones, 2, 3, and then the last ones through the back loop there. There we go, last there. Here we go. I am now going to break the white, leaving a little tail long enough to sew in, so that's going to be longer. That's a good length there. 15 centimeters, about 6 inches there, and I am going to do a little bit longer, teeny bit longer with the grey, but break that off there. I've got the green tails there that were for the pick up and knit. I'm just pulling those out of my way a bit, and now put this one down too. And now I need a needle. I've got a bent tip because that's just what I usually use. Works fine with a straight tip. This is what I had handy. So now threaded the grey on because I want to join this end and that end together. So this is grafting basically. So I'm going in through that stitch and then going through the grey. I mean, there's tons and tons of things, tons of tutorials that you can look up on grafting, also called Kitchener stitch. There are lots of little rhymes to help you remember. I just tend to do it visually. I'm also going in one row above where that cast on is there. But yeah, so using the grey to join this one to the next. Getting out of shot there to the next one. And at the same time as you're doing this, this is also, like, it's attaching it, but it's also, it's attaching it so that it's in a loop, and in a sense you're casting off, so you're making sure you're securing each of those white stitches as well. And then go in that final one again. Take it right out to the back, and then I'm going to weave in my ends. So actually I tend to go up a row. I often weave in my ends on the front side. I think that might not be totally what the perfect result people do, but I just find it really satisfying to watch, to follow the stitches as I'm sewing them in, and I can see that better and find it more satisfying as a visual thing from the front. So then once I'm there, then I'll run it through the inside a little bit, through the inside there, and then cut that one off so I know I've dealt with it. Funny muffled voice while I hold the needle in my mouth. Oh yeah, that. So traveling with my scissors, I stick a cork on the end, feels safer there. Snip that off, and now I can finish off the end of sewing all the other ends I have left. So with the sewing in, actually, the one, you know, these ends, so there's 6 of them, I didn't do those beforehand. I did sew in all of the ends that were like the vest without the I-cord edge, because I like to have all of the ends sewn in before I pick up and knit. It just is easier to not have ends in the way as you're picking up and knitting. Nothing to distract from that. That was a good reminder that Kristen Blom, who I work with in all sorts of ways, she's done the graphic design and that for my books, she was recently pointing that out, of when you pick up and knit, always sew in your ends beforehand. It just makes it easier. There we go. I don't think you need to watch me weave in the ends for this case in point, but yeah, so there, that is the armhole. I'll have to show you the whole garment when it's blocked and ready for wearing. All right, thank you for watching. Bye.